Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at the high-grade Mighty Strike Feedom Gundam, probably the most anticipated high-grade release from the Gundam Seed Feedom movie. I got mine right here through Hobby Link Japan, so link is down there in the description. And I'll also mention, just in case you don't know, apparently this movie is going to be on Netflix from the 8th of June, in case you actually do want to watch it. Haven't seen it yet. That's apparently where it's gonna be. Anyway, let's get right on into the review, and all I can say straight away is I am super impressed. When I saw the initial images of what this kit looked like, the pre-release photos of it at events, I always thought it looked a little bit kind of plain and meh, and almost like a retooling of the old Strike Feedom. It is not at all. This kit is phenomenal, and I love it so much. Well, just look at it. It speaks for itself. Anyway, right on into it. So this right here is what the high-grade Mighty Strike Feedom looks like out of box with a little bit of extra effort put in. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. Overall, I am super impressed. It does have some downsides, of course. It does have stickers inside of the box, which aren't all bad, by the way. But what we do get after building this is just so incredible. It catches the light perfectly, all the angles are amazing, it poses up stupendously, and overall it's just so cool. Somehow maintaining the iconic Strike Feedom look, while at the same time renewing it to a brand new awesome level. But anyway, if we're going to talk about this anymore, first we need to wind back a little bit and talk about that build. On cracking open the box, you do get a decent amount of plastic in here. In total, you do get 11 runners. 3 of them are absolutely tiny, so 8 actual sized runners. We do have 2 sheets of stickers in here, which is a little bit of a mild disappointment, but they're not really the worst. None of the runners that we get inside the box are actually reused from a previous kit, so they're all new for the Mighty Strike Feedom besides the Beam Saber beams. And we get a multicolored A in black, yellow, red, and blue. B1 and B2 are in a nice gloss white. And probably the most interesting aspect about this is we do have 2 shades of gold. Runner C is in an almost greenish gold, if that's even what you would call it, that is super high gloss. Then the workhorse aspects of the frame, which are all on Runner D, these are the ones in all the kind of bending joints. This is in a more standard injection gold. From there on out, we've got some light gray, some more gloss white, and when it comes to the small supplementary runners we have in here, we've got G, which is in a gloss black for the blade of the Katana, H, which is in a pearlescent clear-ish blue for the beam shield, and then just some standard old Beam Saber beams. We've 2 types of sticker sheets in here. The first one is standard style color correcting stickers. Thankfully, none of these are really for using on the mobile suit itself. These are mainly from the weapons and extra parts. And then we get these really cool pink ones. Now these are thicker than your average sticker kind of sticker. So they're not just regular foil, so they look a little bit nicer. These are inside of the wings, so they are a little bit recessed and covered a lot of the time. So again, not really the worst. When it comes to the actual build of the Mighty Strike Feedom, this is pretty much what we would have seen for this Gundam Seed Feedom line so far, which is, for the most part, fantastic. So that does mean it is one of those armor section joint then armored section kind of builds, aka does not have a full inner frame. It's just you build a joint and then the armor for the forearm and the upper arm, or the lower leg and the upper leg, attach around the joint. When it comes to the joints in this kit, they're pretty cool because they are done in 2 shades of gold. That's the very bright glossy green gold and the duller regular injection style gold. For the most part, this is nice to build up. It's got some great detail. The foot design on this is unique. It's got a nice little bit of a hinge style joint inside of it, which almost has a little bit of a locking mechanism for where the foot stands flat. Up then to the waist joint, and this builds up in the normal sort of way. I will mention, unlike the rest of this line, this does have a kind of dropping hip design, which is very prominent across the different Feedom kits, even when it comes to Master Grade. These angle downwards, which bring the legs in past each other. So you can kind of put the legs past each other in an X-shaped kind of way, but it does make some poses a little bit awkward. Moving up a little bit further to the torso, and this builds up very nicely as well. Now, I will mention, when it comes to these shoulder joints, I have seen someone, if not a couple of people on Twitter, actually break these by accident, so be very careful while actually attaching the 2 gold joints in the shoulder together. Overall, everything builds up here. It is a little bit on the complex kind of side, so pay attention to the way especially the blue section attaches in, because everything kind of locks together in a very unique way inside of this torso to keep all the armor away from the joint so you get full articulation in the ab zone. Overall, everything builds up nicely. We do have some nice layering up at the neck, but I will mention the neck joint does feel a little bit on the odd side too. It kind of has an almost locking, loosening mechanism, which feels a little bit wrong. Moving on to the shoulders then, and for the most part the white sections are 2 bits that just attach together, but we've got some more really smart layering. It's almost like a 3D puzzle the way parts attach in and then the next part will lock those into place. It's pretty cool. Speaking of pretty cool, what we've got at the wrists here is very, very nice. We've got a cuff which attaches onto a little shield segment round back. This is a whole different segment to the actual forearm, so that means when you do actually attach them together, you've got a couple of ball joints going on in here for a double jointed wrist, which makes posability even better. Moving up to the head, and for the most part this is pretty standard, besides it does have the intelligent locking together pieces once again. This isn't classic gunpla peg into holes, things slide over each other in a very nice unique sort of way. One sad aspect is we do not have fully color separated eyes in here. It's just one big blue clear section with that kind of pearly finish, so it does mean you do have color accurate head cameras, but the eyes will require that eye sticker. And at this point I will stress one thing that I nearly missed and almost, well, kind of did screw up myself. Do not sand those nubs off the V-fin. On the red section, there's 2 tiny little pieces that are detail, that look like nubs. Do not sand those off. They're meant to be on there. When it comes to Feedom style side skirts, I'm usually not the biggest fan because the railguns can be a little bit janky, a little bit awkward, and cause them to fall off all of the time, but that is not the case. The design here is great, they build up very nicely, simple but effective. Both the rear and the front section overlap each other perfectly and it just works out so well, strong and perfect. One of the most unique aspects of this version of the Strike Feedom is the wings. These look absolutely phenomenal and they build up extremely simply and nicely too. The whole thing has a little bit of a kind of bird kind of feeling to it, and the central aspect of the bird slides onto the backpack section. The backpack section has your normal 2-prong adapter, and there is a 3mm hole in the backpack itself, so it does have a lot of compatibility. And when it comes to building the wings, they're pretty much exactly the same. Each one has 2 white wings on them and one of the gold sections in the middle. When it comes to actually building up the white section of the wings, this is where those big pink stickers come into play. Now these are better than I thought they would be because these aren't just foil stickers, these are more of the thicker style sticker. They're a little bit stiff, so it does mean they're easier to lay down. When they do lay down, they don't have any folds in them and they catch the light in a little bit of a more plasticky sort of way than your regular old flat foil sticker. On top of that then we do have some sliding mechanisms in the wings which cover these up when they're not in use. These actually work really well. They attach on from the bottom first and kind of hook into place and then lock up top, and a little bit of plastic then holds them in position. So you've got a perfect sliding mechanism on these without them being janky or threatening to fall off all of the time. But yeah, overall when it does come to the straight build, this was very, very enjoyable. It took a little longer than I thought it would, which means it is a long-ish involved build for a high grade. And this right here is what it looks like. Now, it is a little bit on the bare side. There's a lot of white plastic on this with a lot of molded in detail. This will be lost if you just build it like this and don't do anything else. So what I recommend using is just some panel liners. The panel liners I used in here are the extra thin Gundam markers. These come in a bit of a set. I'll throw a link down there in the description if you want to get some for yourself. It's $15, I think, for the entire set. I just use the grey most of the time because it's nice, it flows well. It's not as overly crazy contrast as a black, and these just flow into the lines. They're perfect to use the marker inside as a solvent. I use it with some Q-tips and it cleans up perfectly. So this is what I got in the end. So there's a little bit of a before and after of what the kit looked like straight build on the left, and what it looks like with a little bit of panel lining on the right. So when it comes to a kit like this, which is predominantly in white, this is a step I highly, highly recommend. That's all I did. I will mention the darker plastics can mark a little bit when you're snipping or sanding, so it's best to be careful with those. But anyway, that is it for the build. Let's jump right on into the aesthetics. So now jumping into the aesthetics, and I have to admit, I am floored by how gorgeous this kit right here is. I didn't expect it to be this good. I thought it would be pretty cool, but this so far has to be my #1 favorite kit from this line so far, at least visually. The prominently white armor design looks incredible. That mixed with the multi-faceted angles on all of the armor plates means this catches the light perfectly. No matter where you pop this, if you've got some nice ambient lighting or something similar, it's going to look dynamic and cool. The combination of the gold in there gives it that real regal touch as well. It's got that Strike Feedom style gold to the joints, the hands, the knees. Knees are also joints, I don't know why I said that twice, as well as the central aspects on the wings round back. We do have 2 shades of gold, that being the kind of greenish gold as well as the standard gold. They overlap in some parts like inside of the joints, which is a cool touch. Gives it a premium feel, again for a not so premium kit, and the color separation is outstanding. Vents in the chest, cannon in the chest, armor on the rear of the arm, up on the shoulders, everything looks phenomenal. From every angle, it looks so beautiful. But now, I guess the one thing to do is get this backpack off. We'll take a look at that when it comes to the accessories time, but let's just take a look at the robot itself. I'll also mention that this does have the standard 2-peg backpack adapter section, and we will get back to that later. So now without the wings on, you can really get a good feel for what the robot itself actually looks like. Again, so far for me, the most impressive aspect about this is all those nice little angles and kind of little part-separated bits, various greebles around the place that catch the light so perfectly. It always looks good no matter what kind of lighting it's under. All the detailing on here is sharp. Like I mentioned earlier on, there is some issues with the darker colors nubbing up, but once this is complete, you don't really notice or see any of that anywhere. It's such a good design. We've got some great curves, some great straight lines, thruster aspects everywhere, and overall it just looks incredible. The gold on here also catches the light nicely, and again, it looks so much better than I thought it looked from the pre-release images. So taking a look at all the different colors that are on this, and for the most part, we've got that nice gold. We've got a very shiny gold on the hands as well as the sides of the joints. We've got the workhorse gold as well, which is inside of the joints. So maybe on camera, it's not too easy to actually see the difference in colors. I'll take a little bit of footage outside so you can see right now just, well, kind of what the joints look like versus the like inner little segments that are in a different kind of shade. Otherwise, the other colors that we have on here is that nice red, blue, we've got light gray up on the shoulders. We do have some clear blue inside of the lenses up on the top of the head, and we do have regular blue on here as well. Most of the colors on here are glossy, so I was thinking of maybe top coating this kit, but then I was like, it might actually work against it because it has a lot of nice various gloss levels to the plastic in general, so that might actually just do it a bit of a disservice. It does do that sometimes too, especially with the wings on. So now jumping into the full 360-degree spin so you can see every aspect about it in case I forgot to mention something that you want to see. The detailing on here is perfect, the color separation for the most part as well. I actually don't think any of the stickers are for on this particular aspect of the Gundam itself. So overall, this has been executed extremely well. Again, all the details so good. That awesome small waist to huge shoulder ratio looks amazing. We've got angles in all the right places, and that glossy plastic everywhere just catches the light perfectly. It looks absolutely astounding. So now moving on to the size comparisons, and first off I'm going to throw that backpack back on just to make sure you see the actual full size of this kit besides some other ones. First off, grabbing the high grade RX 78-2 just for a standard Gundam height comparison, and as you can see it's definitely a little bit taller than the RX 78-2, making it a little bit bigger than your average Gundam, and those wings definitely add a whole lot of bulk out to the sides. Next up, there it is side by side with the high-grade Rising Freedom and the high-grade Freedom, high-grade Immortal Justice, Black Knight Shiva, Gyan Strom, Gelgoog Menace, high-grade Gundam Aerial Rebuild, high-grade Gundam Schwarzette, high-grade Gundam Calibarn, high-grade Gundam Exia, beside the high-grade Nightingale, high-grade Penelope, and the high-grade Destroy Gundam. Actually, let's just move that out a little bit so you can actually see just how big that is. So now jumping into the accessories, and here's absolutely everything that comes inside the box with the high-grade Mighty Strike Freedom. So what we're getting here is the Proud Defender backpack, the 2 high-energy beam rifles, Futsunomi Tama sword, 2 beam sabers with an alternate double handle, energy shield, 2 alternate hands, these being the fists. We've got wide spreads on the robot itself, and finally we do have an alternate V-fin in here as well. That of course is for the Convergent Heavy Nuclear Beam Cannon Disruptor. So it's about time to get the backpack back on, but before we do that, let's take a quick look at the type of compatibility we actually have back here. So when you do get that backpack removed, it's your standard 2-point peg attachment. So when it does come to backpack compatibility with high grades, it tends to be pretty good across the board. Now this is in a nice white, so that does mean it'll match with a lot of things, especially white mobile suits like we'd see with this one right here. So first off, I'm going to try the Calibarn's backpack on the Mighty Strike Freedom, and straight away you can see right here the kind of issues you can run into. This is designed to fit right onto the Calibarn's backpack, so it won't fit flush onto the Mighty Strike Freedom without actually chopping some bits off. It still kind of holds on, by the way, so if you get into a little bit of a pose, it looks like this. In case you're wondering what stand I'm using, this is Good Smile Company's simple stand. It's 3 for about $12 or so worth it, and they're so awesome for high grades. Going the other way around and trying the Mighty Strike Freedom's backpack onto the Caliburn, and this just works so good on the Caliburn. It looks really nice. When you open up these sections right here, you can see that we've got some pink inside, which kind of does go with the Caliburn. We've got some pink on some aspects of it when it's in this particular mode. But this immediately made me think of another Gundam from the same series, which of course is the Gundam Schwarzette. This is pink all over it, so if we throw this backpack onto it, it matches so well. And this is what I mean by the compatibility is really good, but it's not necessarily perfect. It fell right off. Anyway, trying some seed backpacks onto the Mighty Strike Freedom. First off, there is the Freedom's backpack for a really kind of classic look. This also feels a little bit on the loose side too, but if you grab something from the same line, this time being the backpack of the Rising Freedom, this fits absolutely perfect, and it looks really good too. It does have a kind of a Strike Freedom look to it, which kind of harkens back to the older Seed Destiny design. Looking pretty cool. So now getting the Mighty Strike Freedom's backpack back on so we can check out what actually comes inside the box and what it does. Now I do recommend getting this up in an action base whenever you've got this particular backpack on, because it can be a little bit on the kind of unwieldy side. Now, as for what this can actually do, well, it's kind of like what we would have seen on some of the older kits. You've got two of these almost kind of V-shaped segments, one in the front and one in the back, which are essentially identical to each other. Then in the central aspect, we've got this right here, which is one of those gold segments. Now, none of these parts actually move independently to each other. These do look like dragoons, like they should shoot out, but no such doing in here. This little section right here that can pull up like so. That's a nice click, by the way. This is not like a kind of fluid motion. This actually clicks in a very satisfying kind of way. I've never seen something like that in a gunpla before, especially not a high grade. All three of these elements move separately, so you can move them whichever way that you like. They all move independently, but they do all flap, if, well, you'd use that same word, at the exact same point. And you can pull these completely round to the back like so, which does make it look really nice in some poses. And there's a little bit of rotation there too, so you can get these right out of the way if you want to. Also, I did notice when you do slide this up and off, we do have a 3mm hole in here as well. So that does actually mean you're able to slap the Proud Defender unit itself onto a action base just like so and display it in flight like this, if you wanted to. So now that we finally got the wings back onto the Mighty Strike Freedom, it's time to check out what they look like when they're opened up. Each of the little V-shaped sections on this particular Gundam have two sliding mechanisms. That's one up and one down. For the most part, they are easy to slide. Sometimes you find you might need to push in at the end in these little tab sections, but otherwise very simple. They slide out nicely, and it's a pretty cool effect. It's a lot nicer than I thought it looked originally. When I saw some of the pre-release photos of this didn't look that great, but in person, it works quite well. You can still kind of tell that they are stickers in close, even at a bit of a distance, but they still, yeah, not too bad at all. They do catch the light ever so nicely, especially the way the light almost looks like it's shooting along like little kind of energy beams through them. That is pretty nice. Moving on to the hands now, and the hands that I've had attached onto the Mighty Strike Freedom so far throughout the entire review are these widespread ones, which are always a nice addition inside of a box. The mold is pretty good. They are in that injection gold, so it could look a little bit better if painted, but as far as injection gold goes, that's not bad at all. The other alternate hands we have in here are the standard high-grade holding hands, so just the block holding hands with the standard size square hole in the middle. They look okay. Swapping them out is the usual ball joint attachment. You just pull out one, attaching the other, and so far they hold on with decent strength, but we'll see how they perform a little bit later on with the weapons, which is right now. So the first pair of weapons we have in here are standard beam sabers. The beam is the absolutely standard beam we've been seeing for years, and the handles in here are actually pretty nice. There's a nice little kind of design to the handle of them, which is almost somewhat akin to a lightsaber, funny enough. They also have this nice little bit of a notch in the top where the beam attaches in, which is subtle but nice little detail. Equipping the beam sabers is simply just slide them into the hands. It's simple as. Getting this into a pose is quite good for the most part. I like it, except the hips can be a little bit on the, well, they're anti-intuitive if you get what I mean. The way they kind of bend down, which I'll mention more in the articulation, kind of makes it that they don't move in the usual kind of way. They drop down and change the angle of the way the legs actually move, so it can be a little bit on the awkward and limited side. However, overall it works out well, and this is what the Strike Freedom, or should I say Mighty Strike Freedom, looks like in a pose holding out to its beam sabers, and this works out extremely well. So I was just about to get to storing those beam sabers away, and I realized when I actually moved it to the side into some blue light, it started to fluoresce. So the two shades of gold in here actually react differently to blacklight. The standard type, which is on the inside of the joints, doesn't react at all, and the main gold we have all over it turns to an almost kind of yellow, a very bright yellow underneath bluer blacklight. Now, I don't have a true UV light to test this out, but this does glow in a really bizarre and unusual kind of way, the kind of which I've never seen before, especially not with gold. Pretty unique. As an usual seed flavor, we've got a double beam saber in here. Now, unlike usual kits, you don't actually have to attach these end to end, which is a good thing. Having one just in here that is two end to end is a little bit more, well, structurally sound. Just pull out the beams from the other ones, pop them into this, and then you have to take off the back of the hand, slap this into the hand, and there you go. This does look awesome. Very nice, and it holds on pretty good. When the beam sabers are not in use, just pop the beams out of them, take the individual ones, and they just slot down into the side skirts just like so. There's a certain angle to pop them in by. I've heard these can get a little bit loose over time, but mine are performing pretty good so far. The next weapon we have in here is the sword known as the Futsu no Mitama. As for the Futsu no Mitama right here, I guess the Futsu in this, I'm not sure if it is actually the case, but this actually has two different surfaces on it. The actual non-cutting part of the blade has a little bit of a kind of almost matte or coarse kind of look to it, and the actual chopping part of the blade has a fully gloss look to it, which is pretty cool. As for down here at the grabby end, I did hit that with some black panel liner, but besides that, this is exactly what it looks like out of box. Getting this attached into the hand is super simple. It just slides on in like so. I noticed in everything in the manual, a lot of the time you see this particular mobile suit, it's dual wielding this with the beam saber, so why not get a little bit of that Mecha Nitoryu going? Getting into a little bit of a pose is super simple, and I will mention this is very nice. The bottom part of the blade catches direct light very nicely for that nice glinting blade feel, while the more diffuse kind of plastic up top, well, diffuses the light. This works out really nicely, and honestly, to think about a giant mecha holding something that's probably like a 15-meter long sword is ridiculously awesome. It's up there to me with mecha pistols as kind of the perfect marriage of absolutely stupid and absolutely awesome all at the same time. I love it. When this weapon is not in use, it's very simple to store. You just slide it out of the hand just like so, turn around to the back, and when we built the wings, there was a kind of asymmetrical element to the joints on it, and that is where this attaches. It just attaches into this slot right here, and that's it. From the back and from the front, this looks absolutely awesome, and so far, does not seem to get in the way back there. Maybe with the legs a little bit. Moving on to the next pair of things we've gotten here, and that is the long-range weapons, which are the rifles. Now, I'm going to get them attached, then we'll talk about them. So it's sandwich style for attaching these weapons, both sides of the hands. Those are the ham. No, they're not. They're the bread. The handle's the ham. And then you make yourself a sandwich. When you got these attached, this is what they look like. Now, these are what are lacking all of the color. These are what this big old sheet of stickers are actually for, at least for the most part. All of that blue you're seeing on there mainly goes onto those rifles, so the rifles will actually look like, well, this right here in the manual. So there's red and blue and a whole lot missing from them. So far, this does seem to be par for the course for the line, and that is a little bit on the disappointing side. So in usual Strike Freedom kind of way, the high energy beam rifles can be attached together. So you just pop them out of the hands. The front one you spin around this little section round back, flip up the handle, and the one that goes around back has this pull out stock segment. You then attach them end to end just like so. And this is what it looks like. Would have, well, look a lot better if it had the blue on it, but hey, that is what it looks like attached onto the Mighty Strike Freedom and looking pretty good. The next piece of equipment we have in here is the energy shield. So this is in a nice pearlescent clear blue, otherwise it's pretty normal. I'll also mention that the bit this attaches onto is articulated, which is extremely nice. A little bit, but it goes a long way. Once again, this attaches on in a very familiar kind of way. You just pop off this little red section off the back of the forearm buckler piece here, attach that into the energy shield, and then reattach the energy shield onto where that red piece came off. It looks pretty good. This is a nice energy shield. It does look pretty premium, definitely. You can see through it, but at the same time, it has a nice bit of opacity to it, and overall, it catches the light extremely nicely. Next up, onto some onboard weapons, and of course we've got the railguns on the hips. Now I will mention time and time again when it comes to Feedom or Strike Freedom style suits, these have always been a little bit on the jank side I have found, but thankfully this time they're not. Make sure those rifles are out of the way and these just flip up, just one motion at the back, one motion at the front, super simple. This doesn't affect the joint, they're not really easy to kind of knock off by accident, overall they're just great. Simple, effective, do what they need to do. Now lastly, we've got one more onboard effect, which requires a little bit of a part swap. Now, what we've got up in the forehead here is the disruptor. You can kind of see a bit of a line running down the red section of the V-fin, that's because that opens up, and there's a cannon in there. Now this right here is not the greatest. First off, it's a little bit difficult to get off the V-fin. Be extremely careful because of course this is always the most delicate part of a Gundam. Once you've got it off and you throw on the actual separate part, you will notice that this is just all in yellow. It is not color accurate. However, the detail in it is extremely nice, but in order to make this the color it should be, Bandai just included a sticker, that's number 2 and 3 right there. Not the most optimal, not at all. For one, attaching this is probably more difficult than actually just hand painting the details, and second off, you'll cover up all that nice sculpted detail that's in there. So I highly recommend just grabbing yourself a dark grey, a light grey, and a red, and actually giving this just that little bit of a paint up. So finally now moving on to the articulation, and for the most part this is good and solid, besides two really odd and kind of weird aspects. One is definitely weirder than the other, but let's get to the test pose first, and I'll talk about that after. So getting the Mighty Strike Freedom into the usual test pose, and this is definitely a unique kit without a doubt. It's not your average standard posable, it doesn't pose up, what can I say, like your average standard kit. It feels a little bit atypical in some regards, but what you do get in the end is undeniably awesome. The nice bends, the cool bend at the knee, we've got a toe bend, a great ab crunch, the arms have a whole lot of movement, and that combined with those spiky flared out wings in the back gives an undeniably really cool look to it. It goes very well with the overall multifaceted angled armor that just catches the light in fantastic spiky-esque ways, and the geometry on everything is absolutely astounding. So the ends kind of do justify the means, and you get a phenomenal looking pose in the end, with some weird aspects. Alright, so for the rest of this I'm just going to pop off the backpack, because it is a little bit unwieldy at times. It's fantastic, definitely, but there's a lot of angles and pointy parts and moving aspects that kind of make things a little bit more difficult. We're just going to go through the robot right now. So yeah, this kit right here might be the undisputed king of the giggity goo for good reasons and bad reasons. The bad reasons being this. Now, I keep feeling like I built it wrong, but there's just something so strange about the way the neck actually attaches in. It's not loose all the time. You actually have to push it in like this, and then it's actually in place. It just feels like there's nothing inside of it that stops it from pulling up and kind of unlocking. Like, I took it apart to actually see if I'd done something wrong, but that just seems to be the case with the neck on this. So it does have a lot. There's all the way down, all the way off. Yeah, kind of the leverage there kind of pulls the head off really easy. Yeah, the neck is a little bit on the janky side. A lot of movement. But I find sometimes you get into the right pose and then suddenly it's like, ooh, in it. And it'll fall out of the pose you put it in. The shoulders we have here are what we've seen so far. So the ball joint is out towards the arm instead of into the torso, which always works out so much better. You can bring the arm right around forward in a nice sort of way. On top of that then, you do have the full spin right here. The shoulder does move independently to the arm to some degree, which is nice. There is the arm all the way up. Again, pretty damn good. All the way down. Full rotation at the upper arm right there. Double bend, which gives you pretty much everything you could ever want. And then this nice little secondary joint right here, which really does add to the posability, but these ball joints do pop quite a lot on me. But otherwise, extremely nice. There is a little bit... Yeah, see what I mean? There is a little bit of a rotation to that bit as well, but not really a whole lot. It's mainly just this kind of flexion extension here. The ab crunch in here is nice too. It actually bends in a unique sort of way. If you check out the blue armor here while it bends, that actually, the little kind of navy blue section moves through that before actually coming all the way forward, which is really nice. There is some side to side in there as well. There's two joints doing that. There is the rotation that does go all the way around, but depending on how you have it posed, the side skirt, the front skirt might get a little bit in the way. Speaking of skirtings, the front skirting armor is on ball joints. You can separate this on the runner so both move independently. The side skirt can move around quite a bit in a ball joint, and that is a secure one. It's only when you're really pulling at it that it will end up popping off, but most of the time it will hold on even though it has a lot of leverage on it. The butt flap doesn't move at all, and the second kind of awkward kind of thing about this kit, and the first one of course being that neck up there, is we've got one of these joints which I guess the Feedom kind of has a lot, and that is it's a dropping joint that drops down like that. This is kind of awkward, well, when it comes to poses, because this now changes the angle at which the leg turns. So it does mean when it comes to a standard dropping hip, it drops down, and then the kicking angle stays the same. When this drops down, the kicking angle changes. So you expect to be able to move up and down, but you cannot. It moves in a kind of circular pattern out the way then. So what I mean by that is it dropped down, and now it kicks out that way. That's raising the leg up. So this does kind of get a little bit awkward and ends up with the leg being pulled off a lot. It's good for one reason, and that is essentially so the kit can cross its legs. So it can look all regal in the sky when it is kind of flying there. That is pretty much what this kind of joint is for, but otherwise it's kind of a bit of a pain in the hole. Like that neck. Anyway, let's continue. We've got full spin at the upper leg. The knee bend here is a little bit limited, especially compared to the older Strike Feedom, but we do have this nice little bit of a thruster ride here. Down at the ankle then, we've got up and down at the ankle right there. And nice side to side too. The whole thing moves so nicely. And then we've got the ball joint for the foot itself. We've got a toe that points down, moves up ever so slightly, which is nice too. And when we slap it on the ground to test out that functional movement, there it is all the way to the back. So that is extremely nice. There it is all the way to the front. As you can see, fantastic too. There is the side, awesome. To side, which is phenomenal. And this leg mightn't bend so great, but that bend at the knee means it can get down low in poses like we would have seen right here in that pose that I tested in. So yeah, the hips and the neck can be a little bit funny, but overall what you get is quite fantastic, especially with that backpack attached. It's an absolute posing mighty machine. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and I really had a tug-of-war in my mind between whether this is Gundarium tier or Platinum tier, but in order to be Gundarium tier, there can't be any issues, and that big sheet of stickers is not Gundarium tier. The stickers on the wings, even though they are nice, is not Gundarium tier, and the kind of minor issues with some of the accessories like that V-fin that you need to paint up yourself, some awkwardnesses while posing mean that it just can't be, so it is Platinum tier. Aesthetically, absolutely beautiful. It looks gorgeous. Would be nice to have some color separated eyes, but we don't. It catches the light so perfectly, and it always looks so, well, like its name suggests, mighty. When it comes to the accessories in here, they're all pretty good, besides the fact that the color accuracy on some of them is a little bit on the shitty side. The beam sabers are nice, normal. The sword is pretty cool. The rifles could use a little bit more color separation, and the same goes for that extra V-fin. Finally then, when it does come to the articulation, the neck and the hip can be a little bit annoying at times, but overall you get some amazing poses out of it, and that might just be its best aspect. Its visuals mixed with its cool articulation means you get some over-the-top incredible poses all of the time. Definitely a piece of eye candy without a doubt. Anyway, that is it for the review. Thank you so much for watching. If you want one of your own, link is down there in the description, and of course I will see you next time. I can't end this video right here without the usual thanks, saying thank you so much for watching. This video and this channel would not be possible without each and every single one of you, including those of you who support me over on the channel memberships and on Patreon, including Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Go Little Rockstar, Joe, or G59061, Shadow Wolf 179, 10 Soldier YT, and Van Fawn.